The Venezuelan government launched its national COVID-19 vaccination plan this Thursday, starting with health personnel. President Cyril Ramaphosa announced that South Africa plans to develop its own vaccine against COVID-19. And in Japan, former Olympian Seiko Hashimoto was named president of the Tokyo Olympic Organizing Committee after her predecessor, Yoshiro Mori, was forced to resign. Hello and welcome to teleSUR English. I am Estefania Bravo from the headquarters of Quito in Ecuador. This is from the south. The Venezuelan government launched its national COVID-19 vaccination plan this Thursday, giving priority to health personnel. In accordance with the announcement made on Wednesday by President Nicolás Maduro, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez inaugurated the vaccination campaign using the Russian Sputnik V vaccine. In this first stage of vaccination, which will last 2 weeks, health personnel will receive the shots. The campaign will be carried out first in the Caracas metropolitan region before extending it to the rest of the country. This initiative comes despite the illegal economic blockade imposed by the U.S. government that prevents other countries from selling vaccines to Venezuela.
Yesterday, in an international press conference, President Nicolás Maduro informed the country that today we would start to vaccinate health personnel in this first stage in our country. Today, we are targeting the capital region, Caracas, Miranda, and La Guaira, but this stage, which will last 2 weeks, will be extended to the entire national territory.
Venezuelan authorities offered statements this Thursday in response to the systematic aggressions of the Colombian government of Iván Duque against the country. Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez stated that after carrying out several evaluations, the High Command of the Armed Forces determined that systematic attacks on the democratic system of the country are being plotted in Colombia. Subsequently, the President of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, rejected the constant acts of aggression by the Iván Duque government against the people of Venezuela. The authorities reiterated that the attacks from Colombia seek to provoke political and economic destabilization and violate the human rights of the Venezuelan population.
Colombia has become a huge military camp, acting under the leadership of pseudo president, who is unfit to hold the post of president, who is unfit to wear the tricolor sash across his chest, who, under his sponsorship, protection, organization, and financing, has committed crimes against our homeland, which we consider acts of war.
The defense minister also denounced before the international community the despicable acts of the Colombian intelligence agents on attempting to bribe Venezuelan officials.
We take this opportunity to denounce before the international community the despicable acts of the National Intelligence Directorate of Colombia, which in collaboration with the CIA and the DEA attempts to bribe our military professionals to obtain information on our operational preparedness, as well as to steal or disable strategic weapons, equipment, supplies, and spare parts.
Farmers and natives organizations in Guatemala moved forward in their mobilizations to protest against Alejandro Yatamay's government. Spokesman of the Farmers Development Committee, CODECA, informed the march that began early in the morning will have concentrations in 4 sectors of the Guatemalan capital to reject the social crisis. They denounced the negligence, incapacity, and indifference of the government in the face of violence, malnutrition, and impoverishment of Guatemalans. They also demanded the resignation of the Attorney General Maria Consuelo Porras and accused her of being an ally of impunity. They also rejected the acts of violence against the committee's leaders, in which children and women have also been affected.
The people can no longer tolerate the corruption in our country. The justice system is taken over by corrupt. Consuelo Porras has to resign because she has not clarified the facts of the assassinations of the defenders of the people's rights.
In Spain, more than 50 people were injured in Madrid and Catalonia in confrontations with the police amid protests against the imprisonment of rapper Pablo Hasél. Madrid Emergency Services reported the assistance of over 50 people and 5 agents, while the authorities convicted minors. Referring to the protests in Catalonia, the health centers reported 14 injured, 8 of them are police officers, while the authorities reported 33 arrests. In both demonstrations, citizens demanding the release of Hasél and respect for freedom of expression. And in staying on the subject, rap artist Pablo Hasél, as we mentioned, has received an additional sentence of 2.5 years imprisonment for threatening a witness. The rapper was sentenced by a court in Lleida on charges of obstruction of justice and threats. The convictions add to the 9-month sentence he's currently serving for the crimes of glorifying terrorism and insulting the monarchy. The decision comes after 2 days of protests in at least 5 Spanish cities following his arrest at a university campus for the content of a song and 64 tweets in which he expresses his ideas about the Spanish monarchy. This Thursday, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa told Parliament that the country plans to create its own vaccine for COVID-19 following his State of the Nation address.
I've asked the Minister of Higher Education and Innovation to put together a team of scientists to begin the process of developing our own vaccines so that we can deal with this pandemic and future ones. Yesterday, this great and hopeful nation, devastated by a deadly pandemic, lifted its head, straightened its back, and welcomed a new era in our fight against the pandemic.
South Africa launched its coronavirus vaccine campaign on February 17th, shortly after the arrival of the first doses of the vaccine developed by Johnson & Johnson.
Less than 24 hours after the shipment landed of the virus, the first COVID-19 vaccine was administered in our country. Our vaccination program, which is our best defense against this pandemic, has begun.
Northern Ireland's First Minister Arlene Foster on Thursday announced that coronavirus lockdown restrictions will remain in place for at least 4 more weeks.
So the decisions facing the Executive today have not been straightforward. There are many factors which have been assessed and balanced, but what is clear is that we must proceed with great care and with caution. We need our decisions to be both safe and sustainable, and I'm determined that through the proper sequencing of actions as we emerge from these restrictions, that we leave lockdowns in the rear view and that we do not step backwards again. Preschool and nursery children will return, as well as primary 1 to 3, to face-to-face teaching with effect from the 8th of March. Obviously, those children who are the children of key workers and of other year groups can continue to attend school. Students engaged in completing qualifications such as GCSE, AS and A-level and other vocational qualifications, so principally years 12 to 14, will return to full-time face-to-face teaching with effect from the 22nd of March.
In Germany, Interior Minister Horst Seehofer said on Thursday that about 1/5 of the people checked at the Czech and Austrian borders since strict controls were introduced on Sunday have been sent back. Germany implemented checks on its borders with the Czech Republic and Austria's Tyrol province in a bid to reduce the spread of more contagious coronavirus variants that have been taking hold there. It is restricting entry to German citizens and residents, truck drivers, transport and health service workers, and a few others, including cross-border commuters working in relevant sectors. Everyone has to show a negative coronavirus test. The Interior Minister indicated that Germany is likely to extend border restrictions beyond the initial 10-day period.
We introduced the entry restrictions and the stationary border controls for one single important reason, namely the protection of the population against health threats, to protect the population from highly infectious and potentially deadly virus. At the borders of Saxony, Bavaria, considering in Bavaria both Czech Republic and Austria-Tyrol, 50,000 controls have been carried out until this morning. At these borders, in total, and 10,000 rejections have taken place.
The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago on Thursday called on the World Health Organization to convene an international convention of the world's people's representatives to commit to the fair sharing of coronavirus vaccines.
As there is the understandable rush to receive the vaccines and inoculation of our various populations, we are more than a little bit concerned that there is or is to be hoarding and price gouging, as well as undue preference in some quarters. This being so, we at CARICOM have recently called upon WHO to immediately convene an international convention of the world's people's representatives to commiserate, explain, assist, and commit to a fair sharing of the available vaccine resources for the benefit of all humankind and not just the privileged, well-heeled few.
Moving on to Brazil, the Black Coalition for Rights has demanded the inclusion of the marginalized communities of the country in the mass vaccination plans against COVID-19. The movement, which includes about 200 organizations, calls on the population to demonstrate against the inequality and the poverty that has characterized the government of President Jair Bolsonaro and demanded fair distribution of jabs, which are currently only benefiting privileged sectors. The group also denounced the health crisis, which has worsened in the context of the pandemic, and demanded emergency financial aid from the authorities to alleviate the poverty faced by Black communities. The World Health Organization's Africa Director said it will send more than 11,000 Ebola vaccinations to Guinea in the coming days to combat the recent epidemic of the deadly hemorrhagic fever that has been declared in the country's southern region.
WHO has released $1.25 million to support the response in Guinea and to show up readiness in 6 neighboring countries. Within the epicenter of the outbreak in a border area, the sub-region is on high alert and authorities are reinforcing public health measures, including surveillance, to quickly respond to possible cross-border infections. Our collective quick action is crucial to avert an uncontrolled spread of Ebola amid the COVID-19 pandemic, which has already pushed health workers and health facilities to the edge. It's not easy to say how long we expect an outbreak to last. Clearly, we think it's not likely at all that we will have a similar situation in Guinea and the neighboring West African countries as happened in the past, because capacities have been built up not only in Guinea, but also in countries like Sierra Leone, Liberia, and as Dr. Janssen was saying, the work of talking to each other, exchanging information between the countries has already started. So we've seen a very rapid response in both countries, building on previous experiences, and we anticipate that these outbreaks can be brought under control as soon as possible.
Former Olympian Seiko Hashimoto has been named president of the Tokyo Olympic Organizing Committee. The former Olympian replaces 83-year-old Yoshiro Mori, who was forced to resign last week after making sexist comments about women. The move would be groundbreaking in Japan, where women are rare in the boardroom or in positions of high power. The 56-year-old Hashimoto had been serving as the Olympic minister in the cabinet of Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga. Hashimoto competed in 3 Summer Olympics in cycling and in 4 Winter Olympics in speed skating. Her 7 appearances is the most by any multi-season Olympian, dating from the first modern Olympics in 1896.
From now on, I think that we, together with the new Olympic minister, must work closely with each other to become an organizing committee that is trusted by everyone in Japan and overseas. I would like to create a legacy that will create a society where people can live in harmony with each other, regardless of gender, disability, race, or sexual orientation. Taking advantage of my experience so far, as the president of the organizing committee, I will do my best to make the Tokyo Games a success.
And the Japanese Prime Minister wished Hashimoto good luck and said that he hoped the organizing committee would have a fresh start as a free and open organization.
The new Tokyo 2020 Organizing Committee President Hashimoto has worked hard as the minister in charge of the Olympics and Paralympics. She will be appointed the new president, and we would like her to do her best for a safe and secure tournament that is welcomed by the people and the world. As a government, we will firmly support her. I would like Tamayo Marukawa to do her best by making the best use of your experience as the Olympic minister in charge. Also, as a woman with fresh ideas, I would like her to realize a safe and secure competition as the minister in charge. Also, as the Minister of Gender Equality, and I want her to do her best to realize it in this current situation. With that in mind, I ask Marukawa to succeed Hashimoto.
China's foreign ministry criticized Canada for joining the U.S. in endorsing a declaration denouncing state-sponsored arbitrary detention of foreign citizens for political purposes.
Canada colluded with some countries to issue a so-called declaration against arbitrary detention and deliberately let the relevant people slander China's arbitrary detention of Canadian citizens Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. It is completely the trick that a thief crying out, "Stop thief!" and a poor lie which revealed the truth. China is firmly opposed to it and has already made serious complaint with the Canadian side. Canada's so-called declaration looks more like a confession in which the Canadian side admits its mistake in the Meng Wanzhou case. On one hand, the Canadian side advocates that it adheres to the rule of law, but on the other hand, it acts as an accomplice of the U.S. and arbitrarily detains Chinese citizens. What a despicable and hypocritical act it is.
Russia said on Thursday it was expelling a diplomat from Estonia after the Baltic country expelled a Russian envoy.
Unfortunately, the Estonian side has showed reluctance to overcome its unreasonable hostility towards Russia. Recently, a newly sworn government has declared persona non grata a diplomat from the Russian embassy in Tallinn. Maybe they have decided to show its loyalty to its advisors in Washington, in Brussels, this way. He, the expelled diplomat, was working on cultural and education issues, in those spheres where the cooperation between our countries has been still maintained. The Russian answer was no long in coming. The Estonian ambassador in Moscow was summoned. We have prompted our strong protest and announced the expulsion of one of the Estonian diplomats. I'd like to underline it's not our initiative, but our response.
The living conditions of migrants stuck in Bosnia have somewhat improved after the country's military erected tents and allowed several humanitarian organizations to regularly distribute supplies. The newly erected tents house around 1,000 people, but in the makeshift camp of Lipa near Bosnia's northwest border with EU member Croatia, the lack of running water and adequate medical care has led to cases of scabies and other sanitation-linked illnesses. The camp was severely damaged by a fire last December, leaving around 1,000 people without a shelter. Bosnian authorities sent in the military to erect heated tents in which hundreds of migrants are now crammed. Migrants came to Bosnia with the aim of reaching Croatia before moving into Western Europe. Many have complained about the violence by police and being pushed back at the border.
The condition is little bit, not much, little bit getting better here in Lipa, because nowadays the weather is getting better and we are not feeling much cold.
And now the condition now is in the Lipa, it's better than before because we have here a tent, so we have a better place. The same time it will be little cold, so we can manage where we have a heater.
This Thursday, the United Nations is discussing racism, xenophobia, and discrimination within the framework of the Decade of Action for the Sustainable Development Goals. The Economic and the Social Council of the United Nations is hosting the virtual meeting, which brings together foreign ministers from across the world to discuss measures to eliminate racism, discrimination, and xenophobia. The diplomats are addressing inequality, peace, justice, and COVID-19. It is a preparation of high-level political forum on sustainable development scheduled for July of this year. The United Nations has presented a report saying humans are making Earth a broken and increasingly unavailable planet, that the climate change and loss of biodiversity and pollution. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the world must make dramatic changes to society, economics, and daily life in order to save itself.
2021 is a make it or break it year. We are not too late, but we need to make sure that we are able not only to create the conditions for a drastic reduction of emissions in the horizon of the next decade, making it possible to achieve the limit of 1.5 degrees. This is the year where we need to have a new framework to preserve biodiversity, and this is the year where we need to take a number of very important measures to reduce pollution. I mean, it's a make it or break it year, indeed. I want to be clear. Without nature's help, we will not thrive or even survive. And for too long, we have been waging a senseless and suicidal war on nature. The result is three interlinked environmental crises: climate disruption, biodiversity loss, and pollution that threaten our viability as a species. And they are caused by unsustainable production and consumption. Human well-being lies in protecting the health of the planet, and it's time to reevaluate and reset our relationship with nature. And this report can help us do so.
And now let's go live to images from Mars, where NASA successfully landed its Perseverance Rover this Thursday, extending the U.S. record of safe landing on the Red Planet to 6. Perseverance is part of one of the agency's most ambitious deep space missions to search for signs of ancient life on the Red Planet. Within minutes of landing, the rover, nicknamed Percy, sent its first images back to Earth. Perseverance launched from the Florida coast last July, and after a 7-month journey through the cosmos, successfully touched down on Mars' Jet Zero crater at 3:55 p.m. Eastern Time today on Thursday. The landing was the culmination of over a decade of work, but there was no guarantee it would go smoothly, as only about 50% of all previous Mars landing attempts have succeeded, according to NASA. The rover's voyage will also help pave the way for future human exploration of Mars. NASA is currently concentrating on its Artemis moon landing program, which is aiming to land the first woman and next man on the moon by 2024, although the chances of that happening are growing increasingly slim. However, so-called Mars guru Robert Subrin, president of the advocacy group to the Mars Society, believes that crewed missions to the Red Planet may not be far behind, perhaps within a decade. Subrin believes the key to the prospect will be private companies, particularly Elon Musk's SpaceX and its futuristic Bullet, shaped a Starship. But SpaceX's second full Starship test flight earlier this month ended in another fiery crash landing. Here's more. And with those spectacular images, we've come to the end of this news briefing. Make sure to follow us on our social media accounts. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram for more. Thank you for watching. I am Estefania Bravo.